Hello, this is Josh Bloom. I am not at the P or the Black Cow or the PCH today. I am at the BMW, except I don't drive a BMW, but I am here anyway for the car that I do drive. It's time for an oil change and some brake pads, and I bring my car to the dealer because I want qualified technicians and OEM parts for my car. It's like with my cat, Stella. Have I mentioned my cat is named Stella? I don't take pride in the kind of food that I feed her as if it's some reflection on me. I feed her the food that the vet recommended because I actually care about her well-being. In fact, it took some teeth pulling to get the vet to recommend the food she recommended. I kept asking, "What do you feed your cat?" I have a feeling the food she finally told me about isn't the food that the veterinary practice has a sponsorship with or something, because she sure was gatekeeping the info. But anyway, I paid off my car, and I intend to drive it into the sunset, so I just don't feel comfortable putting it in the hands of techs who work on every make and model of car on the road. By the way, the agent I spoke with tried to convince me to replace my front rotors, and I wasn't having it. You know you don't really need it when you say, "I don't have the money," and they immediately stop talking about it. Like I said, I don't drive a BMW, but I'm here, and I looked around for a minute. There is an absolute monstrosity of a vehicle on the floor. It's an SUV, I guess, and it looks like a building. I would be embarrassed to be seen occupying so much space on Earth in such a vehicle. The price tag? $150,000. What for? Why? I don't care how much money you have, and I can guarantee that most people are paying that car off over time. But even if you had it to drop in one shot, and if you did, why would you on this giant gray box? Why not use it to better society in some way? But anyway, again, I know my car is more than most people can afford, but I bought it knowing I would never buy another car ever. And when I decided to buy it 5 years ago, I wasn't in self-imposed poverty like I am now. Yes, I will be asking you to buy me a coffee, to subscribe to my Substack, and to pre-order my book. Speaking of cars, I have a story for you this week. If there are moments during 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration that lead you to believe that maybe I am losing my sense of mindfulness, optimism, and hope, here is a story from today that shows and acts as an example of what is really going on out here with regular people living their lives. I accumulated my gas saving points from Stop and Shop and ran my tank down to where the car started to say, "Hey, are you ready to be stranded?" So I went and got the gas. Now, I do get the highest quality gas because I want the car to last, and I was a little annoyed when I got there in the first place because someone did not pull forward, so I had to navigate around them to get to the pump and then back up, and you know how that goes. So I filled up my gas tank and circled around to leave. This particular gas station lot is quite tight to begin with. I heard that even though it is a New Delhi and gas station built on a vacant lot, which was nice, many people were anticipating its arrival for a very long time. It was fenced off for almost a year, but the parking lot is tight. Maybe it was designed by the people at Trader Joe's. And I heard there have been accidents in it already. As I approach the exit, I come upon a very, very blue and very, very large truck that I cannot get around. As you may have guessed by listening to this podcast, I am annoyed by that. Still, I can make eye contact with the young tough who owns this truck. So I make eye contact with the young tough, and there is no way he can stop pumping gas. It's like if you're taking a piss, you cannot stop the stream. So he and I make contact, and in that moment, I'm like, oh, I don't want to get an attitude. I want to keep an attitude from forming. I want to alleviate any attitudes coming from me or him. So I rolled down my window and I said, I'll wait for you. And he smiled and he finished up. While I was waiting for him, maybe a minute, maybe two, the driver of a semi-truck that was also helping to block the way, that driver walks by and he makes eye contact with me, and I nod like, don't worry about it. Because if that semi-truck wasn't there, I could have gotten out. It was just a convergence of circumstances, and the young tough got into his giant blue truck and had to navigate around another car himself, which I thought he was going to hit. Still, he managed to do it, and as he pulled forward to the light, I pulled up behind him to wait for the light to change. I saw his license plate. Blueberry. Without the E. But damn, even so, I was surprised that he was able to get the license plate with the word blueberry even without the E. Very impressive, and so appropriate for his truck. I had hoped to drive by him and give a little wave, but he turned. So I memorialize my contact with the young tough that I will forever know as Blueberry here on 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration, whether or not Blueberry is a Trump supporter or not. I would have to say that someone who drives a truck that is named Blueberry might be someone I would get along with in real life. Back to some housekeeping. I have been diligently editing the latest Come With Me to See episode about my trip to Pleasantville to go see the latest Spike Lee film, Highest to Lowest, and everything that happened leading up to and after that event. You will want to subscribe to my Substack to be alerted the moment I post this masterpiece to YouTube. And speaking of, you should subscribe at YouTube too. All of the relevant links are at superjews.com. That's superjews.com or IamJoshBloom.com. In other news, I have now received my COVID booster and flu shot and am currently sitting sandwiched between several people at the Peekskill Coffee House. I am unafraid of sickness at this point, clearly. Don't get me wrong, I am still overhearing conversations that are making me sick. Apparently, the girl this dude next to me has been hitting on isn't into porn, but as far as physical sickness, I am feeling confident in my position. Before I came over here, I taped a 1-hour appearance to be aired on the Don't Bother Wearing Seatbelts podcast, which is dedicated to Elephant Six artists, which the band I wrote about in my upcoming book, The Apples in Stereo, is the founding member of. I was slightly nervous because I have a big mouth, but I think it went well. I will let you know when I find out about when that episode will go live, and you can hear me get into lots of details about the book. For now, visit bit.ly/theapplesbook and pre-order your copy. That's bit.ly/theapplesbook to pre-order your copy. Pre-orders are now live at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and of course you can also purchase it directly from the publisher, J-Card Press. Thanks in advance for your support. I told one of the owners of the Black Cow in Croton, New York, the black-owned, gay-friendly, queer and trans-employing and supporting coffee shop, that I mentioned them in the acknowledgments of the book, and they asked me to do a reading. I'm nervous, but excited. There is a bookstore attached to the Black Cow called Buy the Damn Books, and when the owner looked up the book and saw my face on the screen, he said, "That's you!" It was kind of exciting. I changed my mind. I am not going to ask you to buy me a coffee this week because I already asked you to buy my book, so now you should be extra incentivized to buy the book. But if you really, really want to, you could still buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Josh Bloom. This is episode number 53 of the Josh Bloom could always initiate a confrontation with a young tough driving a big blue truck with a license plate Blueberry, but in an instant, he can always reel in that impulse in order to accommodate the common good for the sake of his own personal growth and the personal growth of others, even if, and especially because, the young tough driver of such a truck is unlikely to ever endeavor to commence that kind of psychological and emotional exploration for himself, and why should he anyway, when he is simply trying to fill up his monster truck with gas and avoid feeling as if he is creating a nuisance, because while to many young toughs it is imperative to cause trouble, it is not desired to simply be a nuisance podcast, also known as the Josh Bloom Podcast. It is the latest edition of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration, days 257 through 263. This week on the show, on day 257, I discuss how I think it is just too narrow to label the leader of the Trump administration as a racist. He is so much more than that. He has undue grievance with all types of people, and he will also accept undue praise from all kinds of people. For instance, I don't believe he would dislike Prince for being black. He would dislike Prince because Prince is revered, adored, and one of history's most extraordinary talents. I also take a moment to throw shade at Dave Chappelle for being transphobic and co-opting Charlie Murphy's stories for his two best bits. On day 258, I talk about the dopey speeches that the leader of the Trump administration and one of his flunkies gave to the world's generals after making them haul their asses away from their work to listen to speeches so dopey they reminded me of the dwarf named Dopey. Even so, I make the case that this is what democracy looks like. These guys were elected and appointed, and that's how our system works. If I consider this very dopey display as part of a larger narrative arc, then I have to believe that what we are seeing right now is a prologue to a better day with better dwarves. On day 259, I referenced John Lennon's song I'm So Tired, which I am pretty sure I have referenced previously, which means I am so tired a lot. I feel it out there these days. People are exhausted from dealing with jerks. Although I don't call them jerks on day 259, I have been hearing more and more people say that they support the leader of the Trump administration's policies, but they don't support his character. To me, all behavior stems from character. Did I mention that I am so tired? On day 260, I follow up my commentary about the dopey speeches given to the generals on day 258 to mention that an AI overview that I did not ask for concluded that my commentary on the topic was opinionated but fair. And from this, I have to say that AI clearly has more of a handle on critical thinking than the people we have entrusted the safety and success of our nation to. Since AI is comprised of the collective consciousness of the population, I will take this as a good sign. I also squeeze in a mention of Buster Poindexter. On day 261, I compare the self-righteousness of the leader of the Trump administration, and the followers of the leader of the Trump administration to those, like myself, who prefer the dark side of the moon over the wall when it comes to Pink Floyd albums. I make the argument that no one is better than anyone else, and while we may prefer some people over others, like I do with those albums, we should appreciate each other's objective reason for existing anyway, just like I do with those albums. On day 262, it's not Jim Carrey in Liar Liar, it's Don Wary in Crier Crier. On this day, I talk about how astounded and impressed I am by the leader of the Trump administration's lifetime of honing his skill at shamelessly lying. This is not something that I think he is even aware of at this point. It is a default setting, and it takes two to tango. Most people just aren't prepared to be shamelessly lied to right to their face, and that is what makes them a perfect partner for the leader of the Trump administration. On day 263, we celebrate becoming legal. We are 18% through 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration, and this, of course, reminded me of the rock star who looked more like a woman in his prime than any other, and that is Sebastian Bach of Skid Row, who sang the song 18 and Life. Sure, we have a long way to go. Still, I will always stop at these incremental milestones to remind myself and you what we are doing here. And what we are doing is surviving, helping others survive, and getting better at surviving by surviving. Don't forget to follow me on all my social media at superjews.com. That's superjews.com, or IamJoshBloom.com. Thanks for listening, and now let's get into 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. Just so you know, I am still at the Peekskill Coffee House, where I am fighting a case of claustrophobia, frankly. Do you know how when you are sitting somewhere in public and then you are so crowded in that you feel like you need to plan how you will extricate yourself from the seating arrangement that you have found yourself forced into? That is exactly what I am suffering with at this very moment. Oh, wait. The guy to my right might be leaving, which facilitates a path that did not exist. Oh, wait. He is actually plugging in his laptop, which means not only is it harder to escape, but now there are wires to trip over. I hate this. I am going to barge my way out of this predicament right now. Enjoy the show. I hope to be back to the safety of my domicile by the time you return. Day 257, 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru, just trying to help myself. I personally think that it is too narrow to call the leader of the Trump administration racist, because if his natural inclination to dislike any person that doesn't agree with him was confined to simply other races, I don't think that would satisfy his personal need for revenge, his personal need to enact vengeance, and his personal need to make other people's lives miserable. I feel that hurling that particular insult at him isn't necessarily off base, but I do think it confines the scope of his distaste for other people. It doesn't take into account so many other aspects of his hate. Let's remember that his son-in-law is Jewish, for example, and his daughter converted to Judaism. The daughter he likes. Let's also take into account that his chief of staff is a woman, that his head of the FBI is brown-skinned, and so on. Are there specifically black people in his cabinet? I don't know. I don't pay that much attention to each and every person surrounding the leader of the Trump administration, aka the Trump administration. But I do know that his attorney general is a woman, a white woman, but a woman nonetheless, and probably the kind of white woman who gets pleasure from asking that stupid right-wing question, what is a woman? Believe me when I say I am in no way building a case for the hypocritical DEI proclivities of the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration. I am building a case that simply saying that he is racist is not taking into account all of the other malevolence that is going on. I was watching the classic Dave Chappelle sketch about Prince moments ago, one of the two classic sketches that Dave co-opted from Charlie Murphy. They are Charlie Murphy's stories, after all. It got me thinking that not only would the leader of the Trump administration not care that Prince was a black man, he would only care that Prince was having fun, expressing his talent at basketball and enjoying making pancakes, because that is where the leader of the Trump administration's hatred is rooted. He dislikes people who enjoy life. But it also made me think that he might like Dave Chappelle because Dave Chappelle is transphobic, and that gives us a good idea of what we are dealing with when it comes to race relations. And so we should ignore the Trump administration. Day 258 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. The Dopey speech that the Secretary of Defense gave to the world's generals last week. I mean, I'll call him Secretary of War if he really, really needs me to. Which was followed by a dopey speech that the President of the United States, that title hasn't changed, but the meaning sure has, is in the sense of the narrative arc of a graphic novel, what democracy looks like. As much as I wish that those guys didn't exist, this is what democracy looks like, as the chant by protesters goes. If you put yourself in the shoes of the other side, their mindset is, I was elected. Part of what I get to do by being elected is to appoint this other dude or dudette, and that dude or dudette does their duty. It can apply to the entire Trump administration, not just the leader of the Trump administration. Everyone there believes, hey, we were appointed, we were confirmed. The reason I say that's what democracy looks like is because if you think about this in terms of a graphic novel or any tale, there is a story arc. In order for people like myself who look at the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration and say, hey, that does not represent what I believe in, that does not represent what I think of as progress, that does not represent what I wish for when I think of my future and the future of the people I care about, to get to the America we want, we must continue to read through to the next page and the next page and the next page after that, because there will continue to be pages. Best-selling books beget sequels, baby. I guarantee you, there are people out there that believe everything that has happened leading up to the last 10 years of the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration is antithetical to what they see and what they believe and what they want. And that's how the story goes. We need to continue to be mindful, optimistic, and hopeful that the story we're committed to is worth our consideration. Keep turning pages, baby. Keep ignoring the Trump administration. Day 259 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. I am seeing exhaustion from regular people. I am seeing exhaustion from regular people who are content creators who talk about politics. I am seeing exhaustion from regular people who are content creators who talk about politics and also call themselves journalists. Because, frankly, we're all regular people who are content creators who talk about politics and also call ourselves journalists now, aren't we? We're all content creators now. God damn it. Everyone's a content creator with their goddamn phone. People are exhausted from dealing with assholes. It's like that John Lennon song, I'm so tired. I am so tired. That's what it is. I defy the most fervent supporter of the leader of the Trump administration to tell me that he is not a giant a-hole, because I hear it over and over and over again from people who are supporters of the leader of the Trump administration who say, I support his policies, but I don't base it on character. And they find a way to excuse every bit of disgusting behavior because they see that disgusting behavior in themselves. Well, look, get your act together. Start acting right. Stop supporting people who are assholes. I don't care if you know how to do the job at all. When I got my first job at a grocery store, I didn't know how to work the register. When I got a job at the bookstore, I didn't know anything about putting books on a shelf. But what I did come into it with is being authentic, a decently friendly guy, and even when I wasn't, at least you could trust that I was being straight with you, or as straight as a gay guy can be. Even if behind the scenes I was kind of a jerk because I hated myself, at least out in the world I knew enough to know that if you don't want people to hate you, you have to not act hateful. I want people to come along to fill these roles in our government who are pleasant and easy to get along with. And if they're going to be out in public, which they should be if they're going to be transparent, then they should be enjoyable to interact with. This is how I want to see us run the nation after we are done ignoring the Trump administration. Day 260 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. AI believes that I am more fair and balanced than bots or hired propagandists or plain old cult members that choose to waste time in my comments section. On day 258, I talked about the dopey speeches that the leader of the Trump administration and his flunky gave to the world's generals who sat stone-faced as two total incompetents who did nothing to earn their positions other than to hone their skills at shamelessness and immorality, lectured them, and worse, bored the living shit out of them. In that video, I stated that regardless of my opinion, that is what democracy looks like. These are duly elected and appointed people as laid out in the Constitution. When I asked AI to transcribe my notes for that video, it also generated the following overview that I will read to you now. The speaker criticizes recent speeches by the Secretary of Defense and the President, highlighting that their actions reflect the democratic process of political appointments within the Trump administration. Although the speaker disagrees with the administration's values and impact, they acknowledge that democracy involves differing viewpoints and ongoing political narratives. They urge maintaining hope and optimism for the future and recommend ignoring the Trump administration for now as the best course of action. As you can see, AI believes that my analysis is opinionated but fair, and what I take away from that is a confidence in what I already know. I look at the world through mindful, optimistic, and hopeful eyes, informed by reason, empathy, and a healthy set of boundaries. For those who come into my comments to defend the indefensible, my reaction to you is a light-hearted shake of the head, similar to how I would react to a small child who touches a stove. I would play them Hot, Hot, Hot by Buster Poindexter as a reminder. Children have to make mistakes to learn lessons. I am always surprised at how adult children are touching stoves all over this nation. I hope your wounds heal and that you will ignore the Trump administration. Day 261 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. We are being governed by a group whose followers believe as they do. They believe that they are better. They believe that they are better than those who do not see the world as they do. They believe that they are better than those who they say are woke. The fact is, no one is better than anyone else. And if you were going to try to make the argument that some people are better than others, I would say that the people who are better are those who do not believe that they are better. If you are a person that believes that somehow your DNA makes you better than someone else, then you are not better than the person you are thinking that about. But you can be. That is one of the glorious aspects of the human mind. It is very malleable. How do we know? We know because the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration have cultivated such a substantial following for an ideology that is rooted in trying to divide people and trying to use that group of divided people as a weapon against those who do not fall under their corrupt, disingenuous, and malevolent spell. Do you know the album The Wall by Pink Floyd? It is a concept album about building emotional walls. But I am quite certain that a fan of The Wall, who is also a fan of the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, probably thinks that album is about building a wall in the southern border. But anyway, I am not as much of a fan of The Wall as I am of The Dark Side of the Moon, but I enjoy The Wall, and I would never try to take away from the fact that The Wall is a substantial, classic, and legendary work of art. And so I would hope that the leader of the Trump administration, and the followers of the leader of the Trump administration would endeavor to think about their fellow citizens as works of art that they can appreciate as much as anyone else in the population, whether they follow or ignore the Trump administration. Day 262 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. If you develop the ability, like the leader of the Trump administration has through a lifetime of honing this skill, if you develop the ability to be shameless, and you have trained your shameless mind to lie without even being aware that you're lying anymore, so that you simply say and do whatever it is you have to say and do in order to create the outcome that you want with only fidelity to your personal truth, then you can get as far as the leader of the Trump administration. If you also have a father that gives you hundreds of millions of dollars to squander. Most people, and when I say most, I mean all people, expect that when they ask someone something, that what they hear in return is the truth. Most people, and when I say most, I mean all, again, do not expect and frankly are not prepared to deal with someone who is completely committed to lying to their face. It is not a decision. It is not, I'm going to lie to you. It is a default setting. It is a system. It is not a decision. It is not Jim Carrey in Liar, Liar. It is Don Wary in Crier, Crier. It is a system honed over a lifetime of lying and deceiving. We know this because we have the receipts, and that is how a cult leader cultivates cult members, by systematically lying to them and lying to them and lying to them and lying to them. Because people do not believe that someone would do that. They do not believe that a person could possibly have that within them to lie and lie and lie and lie and lie and endlessly lie. But that is how a con man cultivates marks, by taking advantage of our goodwill. I do not blame the followers of the leader of the Trump administration. I do not blame them for being taken advantage of by someone who is this highly skilled. When you sit down to play poker with someone who is a hustler, when you play pool with someone who is a hustler, when you do that, you need to remember that you could be being hustled, because that's what a hustler does. A hustler lies to you. The hustler has developed skills to make you feel as if you're not being hustled. And when they hustle you, you learn a lesson from that. And I hope you will learn a lesson if you are the subject of this kind of manipulation, because it is never too late to ignore the Trump administration. Day 263 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. We made it. We are now legal. 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration has made it to 18%. That's right, 18% of the final term of the leader of the Trump administration. And as usual, I prefer to use this milestone to acknowledge the reason why I am doing this series in the first place. When the leader of the Trump administration was elected again, I felt the same sense of doom that I felt the first time, but I felt it even more strongly. And I felt that way because of the fact that so many of my fellow Americans did not see what I see in this person, or worse, and more likely, had been misinformed and misled. And so I asked myself how I would deal with this on a daily basis as someone who consumes so much news media. I decided that I would stop paying so much attention to that news media, but the title, sort of, kind of, a little bit ignoring the Trump administration, isn't quite as catchy as ignoring the Trump administration, which elicits so much engagement from baited and triggered followers of the leader of the Trump administration. So that is how we arrived where we are now. I choose to pay less attention to the news media that was infiltrating my brain and claiming my mind and taking up my time, and decided to use that reclaimed mind and regained time to put towards creative efforts that would make my life better, that would make the world around me better, and allow me the time to have more substantial interactions with the people that I care about. I have accomplished this over the last 263 days of ignoring the Trump administration, and I encourage you and anyone that you care about to adopt a similar mode of mindfulness, a similar operation of optimism, and a similar having of hope. We can't ignore everything that's happening around us, and we can't ignore the Trump administration completely because ignorance is not healthy. But indulging too heavily in noticing all of the behavior of the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration is not living. It is a small death. Like Sebastian Bach of Kid Row sang, "It's 18 and life, baby." Don't succumb to an out-of-control situation. Continue to ignore the Trump administration.
Hey, it's Josh. I'm back. I was home for a while, but now it is the next morning, and I am back at the Black Cow, the black-owned, gay-friendly, queer and trans-employing and supporting coffee shop. You probably have an image in your head of Sebastian Bach in his prime right now, and I suggest you leave it that way. Let Sebastian exist in his youth in your mind. It is good for him, and it is good for you. Here's some exciting news. I will be releasing the next edition of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration this Wednesday, promoting my book and editing the Spike Lee and Akira Kurosawa Come With Me to See video, and getting vaccines and doing laundry and going to the dentist and getting my car maintained and working on new and upcoming projects means that I have fallen behind. I know that doesn't matter to you. And honestly, it only matters to me as a person who is constantly pursuing a sense of purpose. So, I will continue writing here at the Black Cow and preparing the next episode. Until Wednesday, thanks again for listening. Please leave a 5-star rating for the Josh Bloom podcast in your podcast app, and leave a comment saying that you like the show even when Josh releases it on an erratic schedule. Don't forget to follow. Tell a friend to pre-order my book about the apples in stereo at bit.ly/theapplesbook. And when you're telling your friend to pre-order my book, tell them about the show. You could say, hey, I know this show hosted by this guy, Josh Bloom, who makes excuses about not releasing the show on time, and after he's done making excuses, he asks you to like the show, buy his book, and buy him a coffee. I find that kind of bold, obnoxious nerve inspiring, and I think you will too. Let me know if that works. Thanks. Lastly, don't forget to visit me everywhere for everything by going to superjews.com or IamJoshBloom.com for links to all of my social media, long-form Substack writing, YouTube playlists, TikTok posts, poetry, and more. Thanks again for listening. See you later this week.